I mean, you stumbled on our radar, mine and Ryan's radar, from some banger tweets that we enjoyed, and also your books that you've written. But I think my introduction to you can only do so much justice to who you are. Maybe you can kind of take the reins here and just illuminate a little bit more about yourself, what you do, and kind of your perch in the crypto space.
Sure. My very much self-appointed title is as the explainer-in-chief of crypto. So the thing I enjoy doing most is grappling with all of the complicated, exciting issues on the frontier as we head west, like you guys like to say, and then digesting it, processing it, and communicating it to everything from people in crypto to normies. I was almost forcibly introduced to Bitcoin by a friend 10 years ago who asked me to help her buy some. And she actually ended up also participating in the Ethereum ICO. So my claim to fame is I actually went through the process of doing that, but did not invest any of my own money.
Sorry.
It's okay. The experience was well worth it. People forget fun things like the fact that your private key was emailed to you.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I have a TradFi background. Like in a past life, I worked in various roles on Wall Street. I was a trader, did a bunch of other things. And what mesmerized me about crypto from day one was just how fundamentally different it was. And even going back to that first Bitcoin transaction to a wallet on my computer where I literally had no idea what I was doing. I think I just followed a YouTube tutorial. But I had a sense, I was like, this is crazy and different. And I had this intuition in the back of my mind that in the future, this technology and way of doing things, way of building trust, will one day impact far, far more than what Bitcoin was doing. So then when Ethereum came out and smart contracts and tokens and DeFi and everything, that vision has sort of been realized. I've been working professionally in the industry for something like 7 years. So you mentioned I wrote a couple of books. I worked as a in-house crypto expert at Citi Ventures, which is a part of Citibank, for like 3.5 years. And that was an awesome experience. I actually think everyone in crypto would be really well served if they spend some time in a TradFi context for two reasons. One, if you want to disrupt something and replace it, you are going to be a lot more effective if you do it from a place of knowing and understanding. As opposed to a place of like, we're just going to tear it down and build something better. The other thing is there's a lot that TradFi actually gets right, and a lot of knowledge and experience that's beneficial to us as we're trying to build a decentralized, open, permissionless financial system. So I did that, and now other than teaching and various other academic pursuits, I do consulting, almost like randomly with ideas and projects that come my way for crypto firms, law firms, trade groups, TradFi firms that are still trying to wrap their arm around this thing. And usually my area of expertise is at sort of like the intersection of the two. How do we take this brand new frontier and combine it with existing knowledge to just build something that's better?
The Venn diagram of people who were in TradFi in like the old world, but then that were also early to crypto, I think it's actually really small. I think TradFi people tend to need to have this extra step of getting into crypto, which is like unlearning a bunch of things before they can then learn crypto. And so I want to kind of just like double tap on that part of your experience, being inside of the TradFi system before crypto was even built out in the world of infrastructure and payments and DeFi and all this stuff. Just like early Bitcoin transactions, you know, the Ethereum ICO. Can you just kind of like, what did you have like an aha moment or just something that clicked in the early days of crypto that you can kind of share and illuminate just to kind of further illustrate your perspective here?
Absolutely. It was actually, I can tell you, I don't remember the exact date, but I can tell you the moment, which is that my friend was like, I want to buy a couple of $100 worth of Bitcoin. This is when Bitcoin was worth like a couple $100. So I don't know, one or two Bitcoins. And I didn't know anything about it. In fact, before this, my understanding of crypto was sort of like what a lot of the no-coiners say today, which is like it's weird internet money that only appeals to drug dealers. But she was like, please help. And I was like, okay. And I opened the Coinbase account, funded it with her bank account, bought the Bitcoin. And at this point, I was like very disappointed. I was like, this is like, Coinbase interface circa 2013, 14. I'm like, this is just a really poor version of what I was using in TradFi a decade earlier when I was a professional futures trader. But then I was literally like, okay, well, what does one do with a Bitcoin? So I probably Googled, what do you do with a Bitcoin? And this was also around the time of Mt. Gox. So the one thing that came up is like, don't keep your coins on exchanges. You got to transfer it to your own wallet, which like I said, I followed a tutorial. I had no idea what I was doing. I don't have a technical background. I knew nothing about cryptography. I'll never forget when I first went to withdraw from Coinbase and it was like, enter your Bitcoin address. I was like, what's an address? Is it like Omid at bitcoin.com or something? And then when I looked it up and I saw that it's, the alphanumeric string, I'm like, what? This is ridiculous. That's never going to work. Like, people are not going to use this. But I withdrew the coins to some old original Bitcoin wallet on my desktop. And then after whatever number of minutes, it said, your coins have arrived. And this actually blew my mind. Because even though I didn't know much about it, what I knew was all the ways in which I could screw up. Like, just what I'd read, I was like, man, if I put in the wrong address, Bitcoin gone forever. If I didn't back up my wallet, I didn't even know what a private key was. I just knew like you have to back it up. Coin's gone forever. And at the same time, I'm like, oh, but keep it on the exchange. Exchange gets hacked. Coin's gone forever. And put together, something started in the clicking in the back of my mind when I was like, wait, nothing I've ever used in TradFi ever works like this. You just don't worry, right? Like if you have a brokerage account, a bank account, you don't worry about this kind of thing. And back then, a lot of people would say, oh, look at this stupid crypto thing. Like, it can be lost, it can be stolen. But somewhere in the recess of my brain was this idea that, wait, isn't that true for every historical store of value? Not even store of value, anything that has value, right? Like, it's true for gold. It's true for a rare piece of art. It's true for a $1 bill. And in all those contexts, the fact that it can be lost or stolen is not a bug. It's a feature, because that's what makes it scarce. Even though I didn't know how any of this blockchain stuff worked, I was like, this is the first digital thing that has physical properties. And in fact, I think in my first book, came out in like 2018, that's how I describe blockchain. It's a technology that gives physical properties to digital items. And now contrast that with my experience of TradFi, going back to your question, which is like, you kind of know you never own anything. You have accounts, you have balances, but you just know that there's like 8 intermediaries between you and the actual asset. And the worst case scenario is like the 2008 financial crisis, where the intermediaries blow up and your asset just goes away. But even on any given day, there's censorship. And even when there isn't censorship, those intermediaries have so much power over all of us. Now, there are regulations and laws about what they can do, but they can raise prices and decide who they want to serve and who they don't, which happens to be the opening line of the Bitcoin white paper. So that was my genesis. I didn't even have the vocabulary to call it digital scarcity, but I was like, that's cool. And then as far as infrastructure is concerned, whatever's happening with this Bitcoin thing and later Ethereum is unlike how TradFi works. And then I developed this thesis that in the future, this is going to impact everything. And 10 years later, I'd say we're well on our way.
I mean, this is very resonant with, I think, how David and I came into crypto and like what we see as the value proposition of this space. And I love that you call yourself kind of like an explainer in chief, because I think you maybe have a way of explaining this to TradFi. You also obviously have your students that you explain it to. There's a new cohort to kind of explain all of this to. And that is every single cycle that we see in crypto, every single like vintage year, we have a new crop of crypto people who come to the space for various reasons. And like, you can almost see the vintage year of every single person that comes into crypto based on why they came, what their belief system is. And so for the first cyclers, for maybe the crypto youngsters out there, I think a lot of them actually haven't heard the story of why crypto is important. I mean, maybe they haven't even heard the case that you just gave of like bearer instrument, digital scarcity, property rights. And so let's start with maybe the explainer, Omid. Do you use your powers of explainer in chief, if you will, and like maybe target not TradFi yet, like but maybe target the new crypto natives who have they just purchased some meme token or they're like using a wallet for the first time. Can you get to the fundamentals of what blockchains actually do? Like if you were to explain this, maybe the perspective of trust is kind of your book, verifiability, integrity, but how do you explain this to somebody who's new to crypto? They're curious about it, but they just don't have the, like the 10 years in the space and don't have these values really reinforced. So like, what is blockchain?
Continuing from what I said, the blockchain is a technology that gives physical properties to digital or virtual items. Let's break that down. So for like the history of humanity, people have needed things that are considered valuable. They're valuable either because they're productive, like they're a commodity, or they're valuable because they communicate status, like jewelry. But that's just foundational. Everybody can relate to that. And until very recently, the vast majority of things that were valuable were physical. And when something's physical, it has inherent scarcity. Now, obviously, like, gold is more scarce than aluminum. But even like aluminum has inherent scarcity because if I have aluminum and I give it to you, I don't have aluminum anymore. Like we get caught up in crypto with the technical jargon of the double spend problem, but physical items don't have a double spend problem. You can't just make more of them, unless you're like in the world of Star Trek or something. And that's been foundational. And then with the scarcity usually comes fundamental property rights. And I'm not even talking about, we have property rights like what's enshrined in the legal system. But that saying, possession is 9/10 of the law, right? What that means is whoever possesses something is the owner to begin with. And then there are laws as to things like, well, we need deeds for property. Somebody could come and steal your aluminum or jewelry, and then there's a way that you can go get the state to force them to give it back. But these aren't even things that economists talked about, by the way, because this is just like how life works, how the world works. But what's happened in the last century, even before the internet, was that more and more of our assets have become things that are virtual. So if you think about like capital markets like stocks and bonds, right? They no longer, there were once actually in many places bearer instruments. Like you had a certificate that said this is a stock. And that was it. Whoever owned the stock was the rightful owner. There was no database or registry anywhere. But for whether it's capital markets, if you think about intellectual property like brands and patents, and then like fast forward all the way to the digital age where you have your followers on social media or the items that your character has collected in a MMO video game. These are all things that are valuable. Nobody questions that. But the problem is that our system of preserving scarcity and property rights don't work in that context, right? Because we no longer have like physical atoms that you can't just copy. We now have bits of data. And data is the least scarce thing on the planet. Data is unbelievably easy to copy, to edit, to delete, to destroy, whatever. So what we did until January 3rd, 2009, as the newspaper cover indicates, is like we took the old ways of trying to preserve scarcity and property rights and applied them to virtual items. So we had like banks and brokerages, and we had regulators, and then more recently we have social media corporations, we have video game corporations, and it's just not working, right? It's like we've taken the old way of doing things and thrown new sorts of value into it. To me, the fundamental appeal of blockchain and crypto is that we can sort of go back to the way things were. And my epiphany when I did that first Bitcoin transaction was that this fear that I have of something going wrong is good, because it means that this asset is scarce, and it means that there are certain inherent property rights that cannot be violated, right? The downside of that is, of course, if I screw up, I can't just like a credit card call the company and say, hey, can you send me more Bitcoins? But that's how value has always worked. So putting it all together, I think blockchain is just a better way to build trust in the digital economy. And even though it's underneath the hood extremely complicated, the net result is elegant. I have a wallet, like my physical wallet. It has assets in them, and I control their fate.
If you enjoyed all of that, then you'll absolutely love the Bankless newsletter. Join over 300,000 fellow readers, all for free. Click below to sign up.